No, that's not how it goes. Hello, everybody. Michael and I are here after playing our first big game of Galactic Cruise. It is without
Big
the
boy
S on the
game.
end. Yes. So we've played with both expansions now, and we thought we'd share our thoughts because now that we're experts. Well, Michael's more of an expert because let's just say I didn't do that great. Which you'll
Yeah,
hear
you
about on the
did.
shitcast as well, but
Oh,
it gets a mention.
I better listen to that. That sounds like it'll be good for my ego.
But yeah, so the two expansions, Advancements and Accommodations.
Which sort of throws me right at the start, that the fact that they both start with A, because I have to keep thinking about. I haven't actually internalized which one's which, but it won't matter from now on because we'll probably just either play it with new players without the expansions, or
with everything.
spoilers. We'll probably just throw them in now.
So,
As much as it was a lot.
well, let's touch on some of the stuff to do with the setup for the expansions, I think. So one of the things is the upgrade that you get at the beginning of the game. Every player gets an upgrade. So I know one of the variants is that you can do an auction for upgrades, but we didn't do that. So we get two possible upgrades, and by an upgrade, that is basically your launch tower is the upgrade tokens. You get to basically do one of them, and the card will tell you where on your traveller row.
Whatever that section's called. Where all the
is it
planets
travellers?
Are, yeah.
Is that what we're calling them?
I don't know.
Tourists.
Guests.
We'll call them tourists.
I think they're guests.
Oh, guests. Okay, yeah, on your guest row. So, in hindsight, I've thought about my choice. So, I took one. I don't remember which one it took from my launch pad, but I've got to have my regular workers act like expert workers. Is it expert? I can't bloody remember what they're called.
Yes, yeah, you're right. You were calling them pros,
Okay, yeah, my expert workers. So
but they were expert workers.
at the time, that seemed like a good idea because the expert worker action that we were playing with in that game was that you could use one of your two actions on each turn to launch, which I thought, oh, that's great, because basically normally you would need to use a whole action to launch. Big mistake. I thought I'd be doing more launching, and I ended up not doing that much launching. I only launched three
There's
times
only
in the
so
whole
much
game.
you can get. Yeah, and I suppose by the time we got to the point of the game where we were launching, or sort of after that first third or whatever, I'd probably got one expert worker by then anyway. So I think I was sort of using it on every launch anyway.
So what was
Without
your
having
upgrade,
taken the
Michael?
bonus you did. Yeah, what was it? Because the two, I got two. I remember saying, "Oh, on turn 2, I've already got some very nice combo going."
Yeah, you did.
And one of them was related to the special text, which we'll get to later.
Yep.
Gee, I should have written it down. I can't remember what it was now.
But your upgrade was the one where when you play an agenda, you get to get the resource that's on the card as well.
That's right. It was all, yes, that was it. That was the bonus that I took up the top, or I got to take up the top.
It's not so important what part of the tower that you're upgrading, really. It's actually more what upgrade you're getting straight away. It is a nice way to kickstart the game because on the pre-printed side of the board, it is a little bit slow to start. So you basically went out of the gate just doing a whole bunch of stuff, and I was like, oh no, this is not good.
Yeah, and then one of the other things we played with was the special techs. And one of the, I guess it exists in the regular game as well, but we happen to have it as a special tech. But it was one where when I played an agenda card, I got to potentially pay a little bit to take another agenda card.
Yes.
So it was kind of letting me cycle agenda cards and then get more resources from the same agenda cards.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So the technology, we use the expansion technologies in this game, which are
but
the
it's
ones...
worth saying, even though we haven't we sort of skipped over that middle base game where the technologies and are already mixed in. That technology I took exists in the base game as well, just not with that top track along, which we can talk about later. Yeah.
Yeah, so with the expansion technologies, you would basically play a cog onto them like usual, but then every time you activate whatever they are, it makes them more. It makes it more expensive for other people to get them, and better for you, better for whoever does have them at the time. So it's an interesting mechanism. I thought that was really interesting.
And also more expensive for them to pay to use your cog.
Yes,
it does. It does both. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very, very interesting mechanic.
But in the same way that you talked about how we had a different expert worker than the one pre-printed on the board, like the base game also has different expert workers. It's just that the expansions add more of them.
Mm. So would you still be interested in playing? Actually, okay, so when we're eventually going to obviously play this game with people who haven't played it as much as we have, maybe played half a game or something like that. And hopefully I beat them. But anyway, do you think that you would play with a non-pre-printed side of the board and use the base game technology for those games?
Possibly not first game, but unless they were up for it. But it's already a fair bit.
It is a fair bit, yeah.
So probably the biggest difference from just baseboard to the sort of full normal game is that all of the action spaces are randomized. So there's 12 of those regular actions, and on the pre-printed board they're sort of naturally paired together so that so one of them, for example, is where you can take resources from the silo as one action and then spend a card to refill the silo and get money and rep for it. So it kind of always naturally, you were able to sort of do it as a 1-2 punch, empty it and then get the max money for it. And I constantly found myself in this game kind of wanting to do that because I wanted to take resources, but I didn't want you, like especially in a 2-player game, to then get the benefit of me putting one of those resources down the bottom. But we had them actually almost on opposite sides of the board. So it sort of made me have to think a lot more about when I did that.
Yeah, even the promoting a cruise and advertising a cruise, I think that's those two actions. They weren't they were like
scheduling
two
and
spaces.
Yeah,
schedule and advertise. Yeah, so they weren't actually on the same thing or even next to each other. They were like a space away from each other. But
we were so used to having them on the same kind of action building, kind of on the pre-printed board, having them sort of paired up together, that we almost had to train ourselves to not think of it as just one big action, right? Because before we were sort of advertising and scheduling in one turn, but here we had to separate it a bit more. And it actually created a couple of more interesting situations where it was like, oh, okay, there was one situation where I wanted to get some of the cheap guests, but I didn't want you to be able to schedule the same flight before I'd had a chance to schedule it.
That's right, and you used a card to be able to do to schedule it before I could do it, and I was going to, let me tell you.
And you allowed me to backtrack a little bit there when I forgot to use the card, even though I'd used the action that went with it. So that was nice of you.
Because I'm a nice person.
It worked out pretty well for me.
Oh, yeah, it worked out very well. Things were not looking good for me
that.
already, but when that happened, that was like, no, the things just took a real turn.
So, yeah, that's the biggest difference, the randomized actions as opposed to the pre-printed ones. And that just comes in the base game with no expansion at all.
Yep.
But because we hadn't played that one before we went to expansions, I guess we were kind of taking on both those changes in one go.
Yeah, I think it was the promoting and advertising which I struggled the most to separate because I was just so used to, from the previous games we'd played, doing them all at once, like you said. But two other things that I can remember that are slightly different. You have those upgrades on each of the spaces. So as soon as 3 cogs are adjacent on either side, they flip, and then every time you go there, you get a bonus based upon how many cogs you got next to it.
So they call those location bonus tokens from the Advancements expansion.
Yeah, that they were quite good when they activated. Like I said when we were playing, when we start playing a 3 or a 4 player game, this is going to make a big difference. And is there a variant where those are active straight away?
Yeah.
Because that's what I was. Yeah, because I was reading.
Which would speed up the game a little bit as well, probably.
Yeah. So because one of the things that, I mean, I don't want to get to when we were finishing the game too soon, but one of the things that I struggled with late game was resources. I mean, you did as well, but I've come to realise that because it is really good in the handbook to have I need this and this is, and they tell you exactly how to get it. But the problem is that most of those things for how to get it require you to have the other thing, which I also didn't have. But in hindsight, I now understand that the agendas are very important. I wasn't doing enough agenda stuff, really. And I did that in the previous game as well. Late game, I just ignored agendas a lot. Whereas they're so important, there's a lot that kickstart you getting certain resources.
Yeah. And I think, maybe I probably lucked into it actually a little bit with the bonus I got and then the tech I took that went with it. Because it's a bit like, we've played a bit of viticulture as well. And like a lot of the fun in viticulture is sort of going into those, blue and yellow summer and winter workers. Like it gives you all the flexibility and, you famously, build a cottage in nearly every game because, the cards are kind of...
They're so good.
What varies up the game, right? Yeah. So I think you're right. I think the agenda cards are a bit like that here. It gives you flexibility and lets you sort of get around being blocked in different places.
Yeah, I mean, you can still be like me. Oh God, you just reminded me. On that last turn as well, your second action cleared all of the cards, the agendas, and I was like, no! There was one there that I was going to take and play, and now I can't. And you were just like, oh, I'll do this, maybe it'll be important. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't even really need to, yeah.
It was important, okay, Michael?
I want to go back to one of the things you said right at the start, that you think you took the wrong bonus. I think it's kind of interesting because, like, in a different game where the expert worker tile had been a different one,
I think
potentially it could have been way different. Like it could have been the correct choice in a different game.
I agree.
Yeah.
I was just excited about the idea of launching easier, forgetting that in reality you don't actually launch that much.
And we also had played with the intro game, like we were saying on the pre-printed board. That's what we'd played, about 3 times before?
Yep.
And on that one, you sort of put you put neutral cubes, one into each section, I think it is, or into 2 of the 3 sections, which effectively makes the game shorter. So I was thinking, this time, we would have to put more cubes out, and so therefore we would get to launch more often. And we probably did, but it's still not that much, is it?
I put about the same... I probably put more cubes out than you, but you were ahead of me on rep for pretty much the entire game.
Which happened in the first game as well, actually.
Yes. Yeah. So that's just something, like I said at the end, because I know you're always wanting to make sure that people you play with have a good experience, but you should know I'm fine. Even though you more than doubled my score. But I treat that more as I know now what not to do.
For sure. And like I said at the end of the game, I didn't actually feel like we played all that much differently. I don't know. Maybe it's sort of... maybe it just built on itself.
So one of the...
I feel...
Sorry, one of the things that I've been thinking about is there are basically 3 resources that you need. There are money, ads... and the 3 resource tracks for launching your rocket. So those are the 3 things that you need to manage through the entire game. They interplay with each other massively.
Well, Well, as long as you remember that you need to spend an agenda card to
Yeah.
Refill the silo, there's only 3.
Oh god,
That-
how
that's-
many times did I do that? Seriously?
I'm just going to refill the silo, take 5 money. Do you have an agenda card for that?
I'm like, no.
It's sort of like a 4th resource, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
But you're right.
So that was another thing that I just thought that was the thing that made me realize, okay, agendas are really important. You really need to always have agendas, and I was using them all the time, and maybe not using them at the right time. What about the upgrade tokens on your launch tower?
Should have taken note of which one were the 2 extra ones we got.
4. There were
Because
4
yeah,
extra
you,
ones.
you,
2 in each
4
expansion.
extra ones. Oh yeah, but sorry, I mean which were the different ones we played with? Because we just took random ones from the base ones and the expansion ones, right? I can't remember whether they were how many of them were different.
So I just chose 4 random ones out of the 8.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, so
We didn't
one of
actually
them
pay
was
attention to which
being
ones were
able
different.
to swap an expert a regular worker for
Oh,
an
yeah.
expert worker,
You did that, and I didn't.
and I don't remember what the other one was.
One of them was just 4 ads, I think. One was
That's the base.
hire a worker for 4 less money, I think it was.
Wasn't
Or
that the
2
cog
less
one?
money or 4
That's
less
the
money.
cog one.
Yeah. And I can't remember the 4th one.
No, I can't either, and I'm pretty sure I used it.
But more of them are good.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's 2 of those in each of the 2 expansions.
So sorry, one other thing that we played with that was different was the modules.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yes. So that was okay. So the modules that we played with
the
did have,
specialized blueprints.
yeah,
they're
blueprints.
called.
That's it. Yeah, sorry. So the ones that we played with did have the different position cabins, but we didn't use that. So apparently that's like something that you do.
Yeah, so maybe to explain that a little bit, I had from reading the rules got slightly the wrong impression from the way that they were written, where they were saying, you can mix and match any of the modules, but the only thing you can't mix and match is the cabin matching module and the specialized blueprint module, which I kind of took to mean that they thought that it would be a bad idea to play it for just balance reasons or something like that. But from having asked the question later on Discord and on BGG, which we can put a link to later,
Yep.
where I asked it, they did confirm that no, it's not the case that you cannot play with them both. It's just that both of those 2 modules require you to swap out the 48, I think it is, segment tiles that come with the base game with another set, because there's 48 that come in advancements and 48 that come in accommodations.
Yeah.
And one of them, the cabin matching module, puts the cabins that sit between the shuttles, instead of just being in the middle, they can be in the left, the middle, or the right-hand side of the ship. So if you're playing the cabin matching module, which is the only thing we didn't really play with from all the advancements, you kind of have to match up. If you've got a segment that's got a cabin on the bottom of one of them on the left, then it means when you put the segment in underneath it, you need to make sure that the other half of the cabin is also on the left. But because I had kind of misunderstood how that worked, I thought if you wanted to play with just the specialized blueprints and not the cabin matching, it didn't really make sense, to be honest, but I hadn't asked the question yet. But we decided, you know what, we're just going to pretend that all the cabins are in the middle for the sake of our game.
Yep.
And we played with the specialized blueprints by themselves.
Yeah,
but it
so
turns out you can play with them both.
both of the expansions have the cabin matching cabin positions moving. But yeah, so one of the expansions, if I remember correctly, has the planet bonuses on the cabins. Is that right? So the type of passenger bonus.
That's the specialized blueprint one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one we played with. I found that.
So in a
alright.
in a normal game on a day in space, so when you're in space but you're not going to one of the 3 colored planets, you sort of multiply the number of guests of a particular color, let's say orange, with the number of segments that you've got that have the orange symbols on the segments that you've got. And you kind of, so it might be, 2 times 2 is 4, and then you look at the top of the marketing board, and there's little tokens that you put out on the top of the marketing board that say, all right, in this game, when you have a day in space with orange, it means 1 ad, or it means 1 money, whatever it is. On the pre-printed board that we played with, it was always the same thing. In the normal regular game, you have tokens that you put on those spots. But in the, in the specialized blueprints one, instead of doing that, you do whatever is printed on the segment. And what it means is that all the different segments, instead of only really varying by cost and victory points and the colours they've got, they all have how many different symbols were on that page. There was probably like 30 different.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And actually, let's talk about those symbols. Boy, did we do some manual consulting. So from our previous game and from our previous games, I would say I figured out the base game symbols. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get this.
It initially seems like a lot, and then we pretty quickly went, wow, this is actually really good. Like, once you sort of recognize the symbols, it's all written on the board. Like in almost every situation, we would be trying to find our rule, and we go, there it is. It's actually written on the board. It says right there. Like, including the end game scoring, right?
Yeah.
So we're like, great, the symbology is fantastic, and it's all obvious.
Thank you, Ian.
But when we got to... Yes. But when we got to these ones, even though it's using, half of the same stuff, there were definitely some of them that we built into our ships that we looked up once, and then when we came to fire it again, we had to look it up again, and then we had to sort of look it up a third time.
Yeah, and I would probably say the most confusing thing for me was when they were when something would say an action, which is basically a symbol and then those 3 orange lines off the top of it. That got me every time. I'm like, I cannot understand what this means.
I still don't think I quite got it right in my head, actually, because there's the lightning bolt one, which is like sort of take an action kind of one. But there's 3 sort of orange lines were almost like something activating, I think.
Yeah, I still find it confusing, and I wasn't able to find anything in the manual that specifically explains what that means.
We'll probably find it's on a page of that player handbook that we just sort of flicked over or something.
Great.
I think maybe once we get that bit, it will hopefully fall into place. But we definitely did have to consult the book a bit for that one.
But some of the blueprint bonuses when you're in space, some of those were extremely confusing. Even when I would look at it, I'd be like, okay, if I'm just looking at this is what I think it is. We'd look it up in the manual, completely different. Like that one that said, you've flipped the top card on the agenda deck and then used the symbol on it. And I was just like, oh my God, how did you get that from that?
Whereas most of, in the base game, I would say they were all really good. Maybe we just have to learn them, but it definitely didn't come easy.
Yeah.
Here, we got to the end of the game with some of those that were printed on our shuttles that we were using multiple times, and we would just have to look it up each time because we were kind of getting confused between similar ones. But in terms of like how it was to play, I think they varied it up quite a bit. So I mean, when we first played the base game, it was pretty much like kind of what can I afford, and mostly which colours do I want to collect. I sort of want to build a shuttle that's all, or mostly one colour or mostly 2 colours. And they also varied in victory points, but we were probably not thinking about that a great deal, given that that mostly scales with money. But here, I thought I'd actually made a mistake a little bit early on because I bought a couple of segments that kind of matched the colours I was going for at the time and were a bit cheaper. But then when you built your ones into your ship, I thought, oh, wow, you've paid more for yours, but your bonuses are way better than mine.
That was the case for my first ship. My second ship was terrible. I don't know what I was thinking when I bought those modules. I think I was just looking at how much they cost, trying to figure out what I could afford. And they were both...
which colours, probably, yeah.
Yeah, and so... let's just say my second ship was not that great and didn't go so well for me. Yeah.
And I wonder if there's the ability to kind of take bonuses that might even sort of go with each other, potentially in the one ship, if they're available, of course.
Yeah, because in that second ship of mine, 2 of the bonuses were fuel, basically. The resource fuel, take the resource fuel, so I could take 3 fuel, but it was already maxed out both times. And the other one was that I could spend 3 ads to advertise to a guest or a relative, I think it was,
yes.
which I still don't understand, but that's another one.
It was it was the teal one. The teal is the family guest.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but I didn't understand what happens with that guest. Do they go on where do they go when I've advertised to them?
I think it's like taking the advertising action. You could have put it next to one of the upcoming cruises, and that would have got you a money and a rep.
Yeah, and by that stage, I didn't actually have any ads, and I was just like, oh, well, that's not great.
Right.
Yeah, so I sort of got stuck there. But that's my fault for not playing agendas.
So there's already quite a few things to think about with when you're picking shuttles, and that was without us playing the cabin matching.
And
I can see that. I mean, the reason we sort of didn't play with that is because it felt like a little bit more restrictive, probably, rather than just a fun, like lots of different bonuses. But I mean, I definitely do want to try it.
Yep.
But you would definitely have to put a lot more thought into which ones you're taking, and that the ability that you have where you can spend a rep to refresh which blueprints are available to you. I can see that is going to be quite a big thing. Like we're already doing it more than we were in the beginning. Because I think in the beginning we were like, oh no, I want rep. I want to get higher up that track, and for lots of different reasons. But I think picking the right shuttle segments is going to be a big deal if the right ones are not available to you.
Yes, definitely, especially when we use cabin matching. I am keen to do cabin matching. So just on the guests, I think we're calling them. So I remember when we first started the game, there were lots of orange guests and only one orange trip, and I grabbed it. I was like, yes, this is excellent. I can totally do this. And I made a rocket. My first rocket was just orange guests. That's all it did. Never saw an orange guest again. And I was like, no, I wanted to send them off on this rocket again. And that was another part of my problem. I didn't diversify. So, yeah.
And I kind of I had this sort of aha moment about halfway through the game when you were actually in the loo, where I kind of realised that in the regular game, I think it's more important that you sort of stack the colours in a shuttle, because what I was saying before, and it's probably not going to make sense to someone who hasn't sort of seen the game once, but you're sort of doing this multiplication thing where it's like the number of orange guests I have and then the number of orange segments there are, and then the result, you get that many of whatever the resource is at the top of the day and space thing. But when we were doing the specialised blueprints module, it's not the case that you're doing that multiplication thing anymore. Each guest can only go to one segment, and effectively each segment can only take one guest. So it doesn't really matter if you've got, 2 guests and 2 orange, or 1 teal and 1 orange.
Yep.
And yeah.
Yeah, so that was a mistake. And later on in the game, I was hoping that a flight would come out that would be orange, and it just wasn't coming out. And I was delaying launching because I was hoping for some magical thing to happen that never happened. So I should have just kept launching, even if I didn't have the right passengers. At least I would have had passengers to send.
Yeah, because we had kind of been taught that was, well, from the base game, or we believed at least, that the correct thing to do was to kind of stack a colour. But in a way, you were kind of making that ship less flexible.
Yeah.
Even though you got bad luck with how the guests came out, you were sort of in a position where you got penalised for that bad luck.
That's okay.
Whereas in a different situation, you could have,
It's all part of the learning process, and I definitely
that's
did lots of
kinda-
learning.
That's kind of interesting in a way as well, though, that it's sort of in some ways they're adding extra restrictions, like with the cabin matching, about which ones you buy. But in a way, the specialized blueprints, even though I added those segments, in a way it gave you a little bit more flexibility with the colors, perhaps.
Yeah, but I just
Anyway,
wasn't
that was my initial impression.
No, I agree. And I remember at that point you were saying, oh, it doesn't even matter what color I have on this segment. Because I'm not...
Or to a point.
Yeah, because you were just like, well, I'm only going to be able to use a certain number of the segments anyway when I'm in space. So the third one doesn't even matter.
Yeah, except for those sort of other bonuses we were getting that were letting us occasionally have extra capacity in some of the cabins, and then it mattered. Or I think early on I got one as well that I can't remember if it was a tech or it was a upgrade, but it was where my captain
that was a tech
of the shuttle was able to do those day in space ones. Yeah,
that was a really good one. I didn't get that until that's how I ended the game. Actually, I got that. I should have done it so much earlier. But anyway, so can we just talk about variants? Because I just want to. I'm interested to know what variants that you're interested in using.
Okay, so we had. I wrote all these out so that we could look at them.
Yep.
One of them in advancement was the location bonus tokens variant. Oh, we've already talked about that. They're the tokens that sit on the action spaces, and normally they only become active if there's 3 cogs to either side of the space in a 2 or 3 player game, or 1, 2 or 3 player game, or you need 4 cogs, I think, in a 4 player game. So without playing the variant, they're not active straight away. They only become active once people put cogs beside them. But the variant is you can just start with them active.
Yeah, so that's just to speed things along, give people resources, get them going.
Might be interesting to try, but I'm probably not in a hurry to try that one.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we got it. I don't know how many occasions we're going to be playing this game and go, oh, I want a quicker game, so it's going to be, I don't know, 2.5 hours instead of 3 hours. I'm not sure. We'd probably just play something else if we wanted to do that.
Yep.
Another one in the... Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so the next one, the Advanced Technologies variant.
Yeah, so we sort of explained before how the advanced technologies have this progress track on the top of them, that as you use the technologies, they become more advanced and more expensive for people to get into, and also more effective at the end. The variant is that they start all maxed. They're a little bit more expensive to get into, but you basically don't have to build them up over the course of the game. They just start out as if they were fully advanced.
That's an interesting one. So it incentivizes people to get into them. Well, no, I mean, there's no...
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's no incentive to
not.
getting into them early, basically, because
I'm
they're
probably not in
cheap.
a hurry for that one either, really.
Yeah.
I will say, in the regular advanced technology, so I thought it made it a little bit more of a choice about whether or not you wanted to get into a tech, because in our other games, it felt like you could kind of... I don't know, there were times where you got into the one that on the pre-printed board that means it costs less fuel, and mostly I didn't use it, but the time I did want to use it, I just sort of paid you for it. It wasn't much of a penalty. Whereas with the advanced technologies, it was like, okay, well, if I get in, I can make this one better, and then it'll become a proper advantage, and the longer the other person stays out of it, the more expensive it'll be for them to get into it later.
Yeah.
Which, that's cool. I like that module.
Yeah, I do too. So the upgrade cards auction from the Accommodations expansion, what did you think of that? So that was everyone starts with extra 3 money, and then we play out, we deal face up the upgrades, number of upgrades based on the number of players that are in the game. And then there's a silent auction, so you basically put 1 to 3 of your coins, or 0, I guess, into your hand. It doesn't.
Well, I think you could possibly even spend more than that if you wanted, because it gave us 3 extra money, but you start out with 10. So if you really wanted something, you could.
That's a good point. And conversely, if you didn't, or if you weren't too stressed about which one you got, you could basically bid nothing and still get one, but have the last choice of whatever's there. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so sorry, just to be clear. So whoever bids the most gets the first choice, and it just works backwards from there. So instead of getting 2 cards and just choosing one, there's more of a get in quick while you can. So you can either spend more, basically eat into your starting income, or don't and have a little bit extra. So yeah.
That is interesting, I think. Once we know the game a little bit better and which ones might be good, I think that could be a good variant.
Yep, agreed.
As it was, we sort of drew 2 of them and looked at the 2 of them and went, "Oh, that's pretty good. Oh, that one seems very good," which was the one that I ended up with. And then we were going to do the... Oh, sorry, we started out going to do the bidding, I think.
Yes.
And we went, oh, hang on, no, we'll just do it the normal way first and we'll draw 2 more. And I kind of offered to you, hey, how about we sort of shuffle the ones that we've got here so that we get 2 random ones. Now that we've both decided that one of these 2 is good.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, you just keep it. Because I guess you didn't know what you were going to get,
No,
right?
I
You could have got
idea.
2 awesome ones in your hand.
I was hoping.
But as it turned out, I probably did get a better one.
Yeah.
Or at least better for our knowledge. That was your first mistake, I think.
First of
being a
many.
nice person there.
Yeah. And the final upgrade is a starting card upgrade to just basically give 1 to new players.
Which, that could be cool.
Yeah, I don't know. So that would definitely give someone a better experience with the game, 100%. But also, I think that is too powerful, especially if you're not giving them to other people.
And I guess another thing that changed from when we played the pre-printed base game board was that on the pre-printed board, there's just the same 3 objectives or company goals or whatever they're called. But when you play the full base game or when you add expansions, there's all these extra sets of 3 objectives. And one of the sets of 3 objectives we've got was putting 2 upgrades on the planets.
Yes. So we automatically started
when we were playing with that. Yeah. So then it was sort of, all right, well, if you want to be first to one of those objectives, you just have to...
oh, yes, that's right.
Launch 1 shuttle.
And that's right. You were so close to getting it as well, Michael. And then I
thought I was, because I got it in the first
took
game, and then I thought I was going to get it, yeah. Because you used an agenda card or something.
I did,
to do that, right?
I used an agenda card to do 2 space actions in 1 turn, and that got me on to... Hello. That got me on... That got me...
You did sweeping.
Yeah. I was very happy
Although
with
I think I was maybe valuing those a little bit more than... Because it's not like you get that early on and then it sort of gives you like a big boost or anything. Like, because I got that upgrade point later, essentially.
Yeah, getting those objectives becomes more valuable in the second and third part of the game. Because by then you would have more of them out and potentially be ahead, like you were ahead on reputation. So your multiplier for points was really getting quite high then.
And didn't you finish the game with all 3 objectives done and I only had 2 of them done?
Yes, and you still got a very high score. You'd nearly... you didn't have to flip to the 200, thankfully, but, but you weren't far.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about most of the stuff. The only other stuff we haven't really talked about is in each of the 2 expansions, there's just a few extra bits of all the regular components. So there's more agendas that you add in. There's more upgrade tokens that go to the bottom of the launch tower. There's more cockpit and engine sort of pairings, or the tops and bottoms, as you call them.
Yep.
Oh, no, you don't say bottoms, do you?
No, I said it. I say the head and the ass. That's what I say.
Yes, that's right. Which I'm translating in my head. And I think, even though we didn't really look at them, I think those sort of relate to like concepts from the expansion, more generally. Yeah, and more expert tiles, more technology tiles.
No, I liked
kind
the
of
stuff
imagine,
that they've added in for the expansions. I quite liked it a lot.
When I looked at who backed the game, because this was crowd-funded, at least right now, nearly everyone who went who got any expansions got both. You know, there were a lot of people that just got the base game, but pretty much if someone got one of the expansions, they got both. And I can kind of see why. But I can imagine that there might be people later on that might look at this and go, all right, so if I was going to just buy one of them, like which one should I buy? Or maybe only one of them's available, or I don't know. Do you have an opinion about that?
That is a very good question.
Not that you're really a buy one expansion kind of guy.
No, I'm definitely not. I really like the advanced technologies and location bonus tokens, but so that's the thing that's the thing that I didn't realize immediately when we were playing, that basically the location bonus tokens are basically there's no variants of them. They're all out
There's just
all the
6
time.
of them.
It's just where they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, that's less interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there was variants of them, that would, for me, that would add even more variability to how the game can play. So I would probably say that I prefer the accommodations module. Those starting upgrade cards and the specialized blueprints, for me, are just so good.
But really just get both of them.
But of course, I would just get everything and all the like deluxe tokens and everything. So just like you did.
The money was good.
The money was very good. I've been playing,
and I'm not
playing with the Clank 2 money today, taking some photos of it. Oh god, it's so good.
And I'm not someone who necessarily goes in for everything. Like I won't necessarily buy all the sleeves for everything. Yeah, the mat that's got the sort of punched out bits. I will admit that, you know, we get so used to on the dual layer recessed boards, like putting the cogs.
Oh, you keep trying to slide the cogs
and stuff like that. So when we put the cogs on the board, they're not slotting in because I didn't get the playmat. I'm sort of trying to stop myself buying playmats because, I don't know, they seem like a bit of a bear to store, and I'm just trying not to go that one extra step for a game that is pretty heavy, and realistically, I might not play a ton.
Well, we're definitely going to play it in a couple of weeks.
We're enjoying it so far, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we're not playing it this weekend. I mean, technically, I'm available on Saturday, just saying.
We've got Clank to play.
I mean, we're playing Clank on Sunday. Clank Sunday.
Yeah, something else is Saturday, I think.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I still like this, and I definitely want to play it more. I'll definitely make some better decisions next time. But I'm the sort of player where I like to try things to see how they work.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I've done it like with Ark Nova. Like I always comment that Nelly...
What are you going to say now?
Nelly and Katie quite often just have exactly the same play style every single game, and it's just who's going to get the good cards sort of game.
Maybe it's because they've worked it out better than we have.
Oh, they definitely have. 100%. Whereas I'm just like, I'm going to try to do this game. So
yeah, I'm a bit more like, obviously they put this in the game for a reason, and they think it's balanced for whatever reason. I wonder what conditions I can get this thing to like really fire.
Yeah. But
possibly do that to my detriment.
That is definitely to my detriment. I lose more games than I win, but I'm never bothered by such things.
It's fun trying stuff.
Yes, it is. But okay, did you have anything else that you wanted to mention about this game, this great game?
Nah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I'm surprised I haven't seen more people put up reviews or anything of it yet. Like there were a few that went up sort of 10, 11 months ago when it was on crowdfunding. And so far, like it looks like a lot of people have just got their copies, but there's not a lot of sort of media up about it yet. So we thought, let's talk about it.
Yeah, actually, there was
Hopefully
one more
people
thing.
enjoy it.
There was one more thing, Michael. So I know you were thinking about teaching how you would teach new people this game. How are you going with that?
To be honest, I haven't thought about it too much yet. But because we did have the where we taught it. Well, I guess I taught it to you as well.
Yep.
And taught it to Nelly and Katie when we did it on Tabletop Sim. But the fact that they get these awesome player handbooks where they've everybody gets their own, so you're not having to pass rules or reference sheets around, and that there are some of the things in those books with the way the actions are described and the the takeoff sequence and some of those tables. I'm trying to think in my head about how do I explain things in an order, because I can imagine people reading the book, and I kind of want to be referencing the player handbook as I'm teaching those things, so that people know where to find it.
Yep.
Yeah. Even things like that I usually think about is like, in what order am I going to teach the different actions on the board, right? Because again, I know I've referenced viticulture before, but I actually did reference it when I taught the game to you as well, because often with that, when I teach it, I'll sort of say, all right, there's lots of actions on the board, but the main ones that get you to, through getting that cycle kind of started is, getting the vine, planting it, harvesting it, making the wine, filling an order, right? Lots of other ones, but so I think when I taught it, I was trying to start with, all right, what are the things that you kind of need first? And then what are the bits that you need last, whether that's scheduling and advertising probably.
Yep.
On that end.
Unless you like me and do that first.
Well, we have done that first a bit, actually, because often the first thing you do is you look at all those tourists on the edge and go, all right, so in the blueprint road, there's a lot of blue and purple, but all the cheap guests are the orange ones down the bottom. So it'd be great if I could get those orange ones, and then maybe someone else will move to blueprints or...
Yeah, gee, that was a great thought at the time. Cool.
There's a lot to explore.
Yeah, I look forward to playing it again. Hopefully we'll play it before we have a big gaming weekend again. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for joining us.
We went a lot longer than I thought. We had plenty to talk.
We sure did. I'm going to edit it a little bit, so don't stress. Okay. All right. See you all.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.